Welcome back. Well, we are in a government shutdown, and the Senate failed to advance the GOP funding bill for an 8th time yesterday as this shutdown stretches into week 3, day 15. With fewer government employees at America's national parks, squatters and illicit base jumpers reportedly taking over parts of Yosemite. The Department of Interior, which oversees the National Park Service, said it's aware of reports like this and plans to investigate. The Coalition to Protect America's National Parks now calling for the closure of all national parks until staffing is restored. Meanwhile, the Office of Management and Budget preparing for more federal layoffs. Writing on X, OMB is making every preparation to batten down the hatches and ride out the Democrats' intransigence, pay the troops, pay law enforcement, continue the reduction in force, and wait. Joining me now is North Carolina Congressman Pat Harrigan. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Is this now a national security issue with this government shutdown?
Hey, Maria, thanks for having me this morning. It's always great to be with you. Yes, of course. Anytime we have a shutdown, it's going to be a national security issue. I think President Trump came through despite the Democrats' intransigence and actually did figure out how to pay our troops today. But we took $8 billion worth of RDT&E funds. That's research, development, testing, and evaluation. And certainly that has a trade-off for our national security. I was just over at the Department of Energy yesterday talking about what that means for them. And it's significant, right? I can't go into all the details, but there's no free trade-offs here with what's going on based on what the Democrats have decided to do, shutting down our government. We need to get this back open if we want to have a fully staffed, fully functioning national security apparatus.
Is there any enthusiasm to try to come up with a negotiation around the Obamacare subsidies in order to open the government?
There's not. And look, I think that there's a broad understanding that, look, we're always willing to talk policy with the other side, but let's do that while the government is open. Let's not throw a temper tantrum, shut the government down. And look, I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings around these subsidies, right? We're talking about lifting income caps. I mean, the income caps are already at $135,000. And we're talking about a 50% increase of someone who's paying, $800 a year right now going to $1,800 a year if they're making $135,000. Like, that's insane. And so I think, look, we voted 3.5 weeks ago, House Republicans, to fund the government, to pay our troops, to fully continue a functioning government. We expect the Democrats to do the same thing, especially when they voted for this 13 times in the last 4.5 years.
I'm with Mike Baker this morning. And, Mike, you are a former CIA officer. Have you witnessed and experienced firsthand a government shutdown while you were at work?
I have, unfortunately. And I'm sure we'll see another one down the road somewhere, but it is without a doubt a problem for national security. And look, you can talk about this fat in the government, but when you're talking about, and I'm speaking from experience, when you're talking about the intel community, you've got a real problem. If you don't have enough eyes on any particular issue, and that's what happens when you say, okay, you're furloughing analysts and you're furloughing targeting specialists and others. If you don't have enough eyes on a particular problem, you're increasing just statistically your chances of something going sideways. So I guess my question for the congressman would be, if the Republicans aren't going to move on this issue, and the Democrats continue to make the calculation that it's in their best interests to maintain the shutdown, where does this go? How long are we all willing to let this ride?
Well, look, I've told my staff to batten down the hatches for up to 2 months. I made every single one of them go get those 0% no-interest loans that so many federal credit unions are offering right now to government employees, because I just didn't see an off-ramp here. I think there are a couple natural off-ramps for the Democrats to take with this. I think one of them happens after this No Kings rally this weekend. That's the blue hair anthropomorphic, experiment that's going to happen up here in Washington, D.C. I think that there is an off-ramp after November 1st when the COVID-era health care subsidies expire, which they should. That needs to happen. Those were emergency subsidies. The Democrats intended those to sunset in 2025. They couldn't get their own party to make those permanent for a reason, guys. I mean, look, it's too much money to people that shouldn't qualify for it, period. And so beyond that, I think you've got a natural backstop with Thanksgiving. But look, this is doing real damage to our country. I mean, it's doing damage to everybody that we know. This costs the economy $15 billion a day worth of GDP production. We've got 330,000 furloughed Department of War civilians, and that has incredible impacts. And let's keep in mind, this payment of our troops, this is a one-shot thing. We don't get to do this again. Those funds aren't just sitting around. So we've got to figure something out. Democrats have to come to the table here and do the right thing.
Yeah, it's a good point, because military personnel are expected to receive their mid-month paychecks today, as President Trump has repurposed previously appropriated funds to keep them paid during the shutdown. But can't do that multiple times. House Speaker Mike Johnson is now daring the Democrats to challenge the administration's move, saying if they want to go to court and challenge the troops being paid, then, quote, bring it, Congressman. So when you consider the fact that the president can do this pay period, will he be able to do it in 2 weeks in the next pay period?
Yeah, look, I was on a call with the speaker yesterday, and what the speaker said and what you just referred to is the Democrats are actually thinking about suing the Trump administration to stop the payment of the troops today. That's absolute insanity. So look, we don't know if we're going to be able to do this again, because the Democrats might actually sue to prevent this from happening. And this is where we just come back to the bottom line. Democrats have to vote for this clean CR. That's been the Republican perspective. That's going to continue to be the Republican perspective. Republicans voted for this 12 times under President Biden, showing respect to the Democrats who were in office, in power at the time. We just expect that same respect reciprocated back to us. The Democrats aren't doing that right now. Instead, they are genuinely being like a child, throwing their peas and carrots from their high chair, standing for something that is not germane to keeping the government open. If we want to have policy considerations and debate, let's do that while the government's open. That's the Republican position, and that's not going to change.
And you mentioned the No Kings rally. My sources are telling me that that's what this is about. Chuck Schumer wants to get up on that podium in front of all of those protesters and say, yeah, we're fighting Trump because we want to, and we want no kings, and that was the rally. Is that what you believe, that this is all about, this upcoming No Kings rally on Saturday in Washington?
I think there's no question that that's a potential off-ramp for him and kind of a baseline. Look, you've got to understand that at the end of the day, Chuck Schumer said that every day this shutdown goes on, it gets better for Democrats. He's playing politics instead of doing the right thing for our country. Republicans have been responsible for shutdowns in the past. We have learned they don't help anybody. They certainly do not help the American people. Well, so let's keep the government open. Let's fix this.
I'll tell you, the health care subsidies, as important as they are, seem small compared to what President Trump just did in terms of the peace deal in the Middle East. But 7 deceased hostages released by Hamas have now been identified. Israel's IDF, however, is saying one of the bodies released does not match any of the hostages. The remaining hostages, including 2 American citizens, are still in Hamas's grasp, they believe. President Trump is now demanding the terrorist group release them and permanently disarm. He posted this on Truth Social. All 20 hostages are back and feeling as good as can be expected. A big burden has been lifted, but the job is not done. The dead have not been returned, as promised. Phase 2 begins right now. Speaker Mike Johnson highlighted the global effort to nominate President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize in the middle of all of this. Congressman, what are we going to do about Hamas at this point, given the fact that as soon as President Trump left the region, like 30 people plus were executed by Hamas?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be a complicated process moving forward. I think everybody's got their eyes wide open on this. There's been a cycle and history of just repeated violence, repeated terrorism, and the movement back into terror once these peace negotiations are entered into. I think there is some hope. President Trump has used his force and his leverage, I think, very effectively to bring both sides to the table in this. There's no question this is a historic peace agreement. We've just got to make sure that it holds. President Trump is doing everything within his power to make sure that that happens.
All right, Congressman, we'll be watching all of it. Thanks very much for weighing in on that. Thank you, Pat Harrigan. Good to see you, sir. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Good to see you, too.